Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Come on in here and sit down with me. Get yourself something hot or cold to drink and join me here at the table as we open our Bibles up to study Psalm 135. Today, we're going to be looking at verses 7 and 8. So if you have your Bible there, why don't you open to verses 7 and 8 in Psalm 135. This week, we've seen the very first introductory part of this psalm. It's kind of an exclamation point to all of the ascent psalms, 120 to 134, and we connect with the ascent psalms there in verse 2 when he talks about the servants of the Lord standing in the house of the Lord. Now in verse 3, we begin this discussion, this description of the Lord's character. Now it's not complete, but it's good. It's great. We talked about his goodness, his purpose, his goodness, his purpose, his greatness, and his sovereignty. And the sovereignty is connected with his creative power. Now, all of those things, the goodness, purpose, greatness, and sovereignty, are going to be illustrated by what comes next. And what comes next is creation. We illustrate those things by God's ability to create, his deliverance of his people from Egypt, the conquest of Canaan as he gave the land to the people, and then his eternal salvation, which is described there in verses 13 and 14. So we won't get to that this week. This week we're just going to end with the second illustration, which is the deliverance from Egypt. Okay, so we're here in verse 7, we're going to talk about creation today, and then in verse 8, we begin this discussion of his deliverance of the people from Egypt. So if you have your Bible there, why don't you turn to 135, verses 7 and 8, and let's read those together. He caused the vapours to ascend from the ends of the earth. He maketh lightnings for the rain. He bringeth the wind out of his treasuries. Who smote the firstborn of Egypt, both of man and beast. Okay, so that's verses 7 and 8 in Psalm 135. So notice how creation illustrates God's goodness. Vapors rising from the earth. And what do the vapors do? They water the earth. He makes lightning for the rain. And notice that he does all this. The vapors rising up from the ends of the earth, how does that happen? Well, it's because the Lord did as he pleased. And the vapors are there because he did it. Notice the second phrase there, he makes. He makes lightnings for the rain. So when you see the storm cloud and you see that storm cap way up high and there's lightning flashing out around it, in it, under it, God did that. He made that. This is his goodness and his purpose and his sovereignty and his greatness all described here by the illustration of a storm cloud. Notice the next thing there. The wind comes out from his treasuries. So he has a storehouse for the winds, and they come from that storehouse. So when you have a windy day and the wind blows hard, or when it doesn't blow hard, maybe it's a gentle wind, maybe it's a violent wind, all of those winds come from one place. The Lord has a treasury of wind, and he stores it up, and it comes out from there, because that's where the Lord put it. So he makes the lightning. He allows the wind to come out of the treasuries. Isn't that wonderful? And he makes the vapors to rise up out of the earth. So the vapors, the rain, the wind, all those things, we need them. His goodness is described in those ways. Yes, they could be violent sometimes, but if we didn't have them, the earth would be in trouble. So he does all of that. All right, that's number one. Number two is we begin to describe his goodness in delivering the children of Israel from the Egyptian bondage. And you see that there in verse 8. He smote the firstborn of Egypt, man and beast. See, King James has both of man and beast. So you go back to Exodus chapter 12, verse 29, and in that verse we have described for us the midnight terror that came when all the firstborn were killed. And so you'll see that there, God did that, and he did it for his people to deliver them from slavery. All right, well, join me tomorrow, and we'll look at verse 9, still more about the Exodus, and we'll read that tomorrow here on Daily Dose Radio.